All right, welcome. I apologize for the delay. We were having significant technological issues, but they have been resolved. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 18th, 2020 regular meeting of the Forest Hills Board of Education. Roll call, Ms. Cropper.
Mrs. Barber?
Here.
Ms. Choice?
Here.
Dr. Rasmussen?
Here.
Mrs. Taylor?
Here.
Dr. Height?
Here. Now I'm going to try and pull up our flag here. Now I've lost. You kill me. Adam just had me delete all of my passwords. So can anyone else pull up the flag? You go to, do you have your board docs up?
I have it.
You have it? Can you, if you pull up board docs and then, oh, there we go. That'll work. How about we go to Scott, and he has an American flag with an eagle on. Let's please stand up and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. Adjust.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Some of you are muted, but it's all good. All right. Safety briefing last week. We realized that we're all in our own homes, so in and out with this. We're in a tornado watch though right now. That's why I'm in my basement. This meeting will continue even in a weather emergency. Agenda 3.1, motion to adopt the agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'm making a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Ms. Cropper?
Ms. Choice?
Yes.
Mrs. Barber?
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen?
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor?
Yes.
Dr. Heights?
Yes. Item 4.1, approval of minutes of regular meeting. We'll do these in a consent for approval minutes from April 27th, Policy Committee April 28th, and Policy Committee of April 28th. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve those minutes for all meetings.
Any second?
Second.
Any changes? Ms. Cropper?
Ms. Choice?
Yes.
Mrs. Barber?
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen?
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor?
Yes.
Dr. Heights?
Yes. Item 5.1, correspondence. Do you have any correspondence? The trouble?
I have one item, Dr. Heiss. It's from the Ohio High School Athletic Association. You and I were in a conference call today at a meeting regarding this, and what the Ohio High School Athletic Association has put out is a correspondence to all schools in relation to the governor's stay-home rule and some other parts of the governor's rule about social distancing, ability to use schools, and so forth. So the Ohio Department of Health's order that all school buildings will be closed through June 30, 2020. That's what it came to us through a call to the Ohio Department of Health. It was clearly stated that that extends to all school facilities as well and includes stadiums, baseball, softball diamonds, and tracks. This clearly prohibits all schools from making their facilities available to club, travel, non-interscholastic sports during this mandatory shutdown. This came to us from the Ohio High School Athletic Association. Also included in this correspondence is the no contact period extended, which means coaches are not to have contact with their athletes, and that extends through May 31st. I bring that to the board's attention in this correspondence this evening, and it is primary to our conversation earlier today, Dr. Heiss, that also on May 26th, the governor said that local communities could start their baseball programs, tennis programs, all those sorts of things, sporting programs youth programs across the state. That date is May 26th. That obviously conflicts with the June 30th ruling from the Ohio Department of Health, which says that all school facilities will be shut down until June 30th. This controversy in two different rulings is what we're working through right now. We have a meeting scheduled with our athletic directors tomorrow, and we continue to seek additional guidance on this because our community programs are up and ready to go. School facilities are not. The rule is conflicting with itself, or the two guidelines are conflicting with themselves. So I guess what I wanted to make sure of this evening was the school district is not being obstinate. It's not wanting to collaborate or work with our local community youth groups. It's a ruling that we have right now, and we're trying to work through that with the Ohio High School Athletic Association as well as the Ohio Department of Education to get a sense of where we need to be. So there's more information coming based on this correspondence. And I felt, since you and I had talked about it earlier today, and it's on the minds of a lot of people in our community, we should speak to the controversy that we're in right now as a school district. And so that correspondence came. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that was something that we talked about today with when we meet with the township and parks, because, you know, ATLL uses a lot of our fields, but we're obligated to be closed for right now, even though technically they could start on Friday. So it's, yeah, sounds like this is one of those many unintended consequences of varying orders that affect us differently than the parks, and we've talked about CRC as well. But okay, thanks for that update. Any other correspondence? All right, we'll move on to item 6.1. Mr. Pebbles, reaction to state budget adjustments. Unmute.
Sorry. Mr. Broadwater and I are going to talk about the district's attrition model and what's happening in our school district as part of our sequence of events, starting with a $1.5 million reduction prior to the district's levy that was passed, the passage of the levy, and the attritionary models that we were putting in place in an attempt to extend the life of our levy in our community, absent of the pandemic situation that we're dealing with across the country. And so we were tracking nicely to extend the length, or getting close to extending the length of our resources, or asking more resources from the public. We felt very good about the plans we had in place, very good about the direction of the board for an attritionary model and to put that into place, very good about the things we were doing to downsize in certain areas and streamline in others. So what we're going to do this evening is just give you a sense of what's going to be coming up later in the agenda as far as staffing. And we're going to present a model to you this evening. And Mike will talk about the first part of this, and then I'll close up, and then Alana will speak to this directly when we get into the numbers at the end of the board's meeting when we talk about the 5-year forecast. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike now to talk about our attritionary model and how we are sort of how the pandemic has impacted us and the things that we're doing and how that impacts the budget, as Alana will talk about later this evening. So Mike, go ahead, please.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Just a quick overview of what we're doing in human resources. The Human Resource Department, at the end of every school year, this is not an anomaly, but at the end of every school year, every time that we have a retirement or a resignation, or we always look at our higher resigned positions, we always look to see how we can fill them, if we need to fill them, if we're going to fill positions in different buildings due to maybe a change in the student population. So this is the time of the year that we do a lot of work and look at different positions. This is called, you know, if we don't replace a retirement or a resignation or a hire resign, it's called attrition. So it's our attritionary method that Jen and Angela and myself are looking at this year, every year. And then where we are right now, we have no employees that are involved in what's called a reduction in force. In other words, we have not laid off any full-time employees. Rather, we're looking at retirements, resignations, or our hire resign positions. A hire resign position would be maybe covering a maternity leave for the year. The individual that's in the hire resign position is signed to a 1-year contract under the understanding that at the end of this year that position does go away. So that is what a hire resign position is. So in our ongoing effort, we're working as hard as we can to delay the need to ask community for another levy. In the HR department, we're looking at every position. And right now, we're currently able to capture 8.5 FTEs. And an FTE, you know, is a full-time equivalent, which is a position. Unfortunately, some of the cost savings that we have come up with that were originally designed to push this levy may be needed to fund the issues that are happening right now with the COVID-19. We don't know, but the assumption is that there are going to be costs associated. I think it's important to let our board and our community know that there are no staff members being eliminated, and these FTEs are being captured through attrition. I know there was some talk in the community about or letting go some of the teachers. We are not doing that. It's all the retirements, resignations, or hire resign positions. So again, at the present moment, no full-time Forest Hills School District teachers have been eliminated. So going through the FTEs that we've been able to capture, again, we're trying to minimize to the best of our ability the significant negative effects on our classroom. We try and stay away from the classrooms as much as possible. The one FTE that we've been able to capture is a bus mechanic that retired. Richard Porter, our transportation supervisor, and myself, we've been looking at different ways that we could possibly do the work that this bus mechanic position was doing, and we believe we have figured that out. We've got a newer fleet, and they are propane buses, which are a little bit easier than the diesel buses to work on. But we believe we have figured out a way that we can eliminate this FTE, and so we will eliminate the bus mechanic position. The board remembers that we had the payment in lieu last month. We did ask for that. With the payment in lieu, that is going to save 1.5 FTEs with the lack of need of a driver to go to the schools that we have listed in the payment in lieu. I would caution that the transportation with the transportation department and some of the remedies we're hearing with COVID-19, transportation may not look the same when we get into next school year. But right now we've got 1.5 FTEs due to the payment in lieu. We have a NAGO administrative assistant position that opened, and working with the principal and administration there, we are going to eliminate that position, all the while realizing that work still has to be done, and they believe they have the model that work can get done in regards to the administrative assistant position. At the high schools, we've got one high school position that will be absorbed by sharing a teacher at Anderson and Turpin, and we'll continue to look at that between Anderson and Turpin and how can we best utilize our staff. But we were able to capture one position there, one full-time equivalent of a teaching position. We have 2 full-time hire resigns that we will not replace those next year. So that is 2 full-time equivalent positions. We have retirements. The retirements, some of those we have to replace due to the classroom and the class size. Some we do not. And so we've looked at that, and there are some retirements that we have not replaced. And then a couple items I would mention. It's important to understand that at the elementary level, class enrollment is down at a couple of our elementaries, which is why even with the FTE not replacing the retirements or the resignations or the hire resigns, our class sizes still fit very, very well in our chart, and the class sizes are excellent moving into next year. So again, we're trying to stay out of the classroom and minimize any negative effects with that. So altogether, the FTE positions that we have been able to eliminate amount to $746,298, so about $750,000. That's a cost avoidance each year that these positions are not replaced. The goal would be to not replace these positions unless enrollment would go up. Then obviously you have to take a look at that. So right now, we've worked very, very hard. Our administrators at each of our buildings have worked very, very hard, knowing that this is a difficult time, and working together so that we can do what's best for our kids and for the community. So, Scott, I'll turn it over to you with that.
Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
As I said a little bit earlier, later in our meeting today, Alana will share the impact of the district's attritionary model on the 5-year forecast, so you'll get to see that live in a few minutes. It should be noted that these attritionary methods, combined with those implemented, as I said, prior to 2019 levy, had us on a positive course to extend the levy beyond 3 years, inclusive of modest employee compensation adjustments that we have been talking about. So was there more work to be done? Yes. More attritionary modeling to be done over the next couple of years? Absolutely. We were moving in that direction as the board had promised the public that we would do after the passage of the levy. Alana will explain, even with these significant attritionary measures, how losing $1.65 million this year due to COVID-19 impacts, how that's going to impact our bottom line. What she probably won't speak to is something that I must. If Forest Hills loses a similar amount of state foundation next year, to maintain the life of our current 3-year levy, program reductions, not staff reductions, must be made. We will no longer be capable of providing the same programs that we do today if we lose this same amount next year. Today's report alone offers an example through transportation, in-house mechanic services, and office personnel that our footprint is changing. Whether it be administrators, teachers, paraprofessionals, or classified employees, if people continue to go away, programs cannot operate at the same level they do. If we see significant state revenue reductions, programs will dictate the amount of staff we can employ, not the other way around. And so we've come to a point in time, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, that we've been able to minimize, not mitigate, but minimize the impact of the $1.65 million that has been reduced out of our budget this year in the last 3 months, or excuse me, in the last 3 payments. So this is a significant change. What I think people also need to hear is, because we put attritionary measures in ahead of time without any knowledge of the pandemic, we have been able to reduce the level of significant impact on our district. If we see this again next year, I unfortunately believe that the program that we offer, the services, the size of our footprint in all areas is going to be jeopardized unless there's additional resources coming from someplace. And that's where we are right now. That's how we're dealing with the budget. And we will be back in June. There are a few more things we're looking at right now to maybe push that $746,000 figure up a little bit. But that we need a little bit more time on that to be able to continue watching student enrollment, watching how things are happening in our school district. And as Mike said, $746,000 is a lot of money, and that figure could not be, we would have not arrived without the people in our school district, including our staff and our principals and our directors, working together to look for the most efficient ways to be able to reduce staffing that makes sense and has the least amount of impact on students as we continue to move into the upcoming years. So I want to thank Mike, Angela, Jennifer for all their work that they have done. And I I want to thank Alana also for kind of being there with us, making sure that we can match up the numbers and make sure that what we are telling you this evening is actually accurate or doable or within $1,000 or two. You know, it comes down to pennies sometimes. But anyway, enough of that. It's a sad story with COVID, but it's a positive story in a way that we were proactive, and we were able to fend off, at least in this year, a good portion of the reductions that we're seeing coming from the governor's need to find money in the state to offset COVID-19. Thank you. Dr. Heiss, you're muted, sir.
So item 6.2 is superintendent update. Was that your update as well?
Yes.
Okay. So item 7.1, board discussion. Any board discussion for this evening? Okay. Now to the best part of the year. Every year is item 8.1, candidates for graduation. Mr. Prebbles. Now you are muted.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. It is my pleasure, as you said, to share this information. We have 569 students that we're going to present this evening. Anderson High School has 329 candidates for graduation, and they are submitted to the board for approval this evening. Turpin High School has 240 candidates that they are submitting this evening for approval. Commencement ceremonies for both high schools will be virtual this year on May 31st, 2020. Anderson High School will be at 11 a.m. and Turpin High School will be at 3 o'clock p.m. I'd like to add special comments to these seniors for enduring what no other Forest Hills graduates have. And I wish each of them the best in all of their future endeavors. We have had some significant commentary over the last couple of weeks about graduation ceremonies. And I wanted to update the board and the community on that as well at this moment because it's significant. The state of Ohio, the Department of Education provided different variations of graduations that they could have. Virtual ceremonies are the safest according to ODE, and they strongly recommended in this correspondence to us that we try to do virtual to maximize the safety and health of everybody involved. They also give opportunities for structured and controlled in-person graduation ceremonies. Drive-through graduations, there's a couple of variations with that. There are single-family in-person options that kids can participate in and families can participate in. School districts seeking to hold these types of alternative celebrations should involve the local health departments and law enforcement partners to ensure the health and safety protocols are followed appropriately, and we have done those things. They talked about postponing graduations. There were some questions that came to us about why not hang on to the July date that we originally thought we might be able to navigate towards. They strongly recommend that we don't do that given the unpredictability of this disease and the possibility that you plan something out there, it doesn't happen, and then you have nothing for your graduates. And so they felt like postponing would not be a good idea. It is important that every effort be made to avoid mass gatherings, which potentially would allow the virus to spread quickly. The Ohio Department of Health has defined mass gatherings as a group of 10 people or more who do not live in the same household. We know this is a disappointment from ODE, and we're hopeful that people will work with us. I think this is the good part that I want to bring about because we want to honor these students. Both of our principals are adamant, absolutely 100% adamant that a virtual commencement ceremony provides the highest level of opportunity for nothing to go wrong, for every student to be honored in the same way, in a respectful manner, without being missed by anything that might happen, any distraction. What both of our high schools are doing that is not on this page of virtual drive-through single family, both of them and their teams are literally going to students' homes. They believe that it is that important that they individually recognize these students, they individually show up at their homes. Now, they may not be handing them diplomas at their homes, but they're going there to give them accolades and to give them documents that are related to the end of the school year, and they want to honor those kids. That does not appear on ODE's list of things that you can do to honor your seniors. Two other significant things here that we have learned and that have happened over the last couple of weeks. Anderson High School is going to have a virtual lap, or excuse me, a victory lap. Kids will get out of the car, they will take their picture, and they will have their diplomas passed out on that day. At Turpin, the diplomas will be delivered to homes between June 1st and June 5th. I believe it's May 23rd or it's going to be May 30th, and so I'm not going to land on a specific date, but there will be a senior Spartan lap that's going to happen at Turpin High School. And so what's happening with cars and caravan style at Anderson will be happening in a different fashion at Turpin High School. So we are going to have virtual, we are going to have parade or caravan, and we are going to have individual delivering of accolades and information to students' homes. And none of us are happy about that, because we want our seniors to be honored in a traditional fashion. It's not going to happen this year. And we're grateful for all the people who have leaned in and say, we get it, we understand it. And hopefully people out there will understand how important these graduates are to us, how important it is that we celebrate them, and how important it is that we have something that's left as a memory opportunity for them through a virtual commencement that they can take with them through the rest of their lives, and not be distracted by a horn honking or someone looking the other way in their moment, because there's a lot of stuff happening. So at the end of the day, I have to say I am so proud of our principals and their teams for putting together the individualized opportunities for students, for ensuring that each one is honored appropriately, equally, and for doing the other things that they can to try to make this a special moment to the best of their ability. I know that was very long, Dr. Heiss, but I just wanted people to know this is really weighing on our minds, and it's important that these seniors understand how much we care and how much we're concerned. And so it is with pride that I recommend the board approve the granting of diplomas to the candidates listed in the attachments that were provided to you in your documents, and any students who enroll in Anderson or Turpin High School after this date, subject to satisfactory completion of all state and local requirements as noted for graduation.
All right, thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the granting of diplomas to these special students?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Ms. Cropper?
Dr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Ms. Choice, up, you're muted, Dee Dee. Mrs. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Heights.
Yes. Thank you all. At this point, I traditionally caution the seniors that we still have another week to go and to be good, but I'm sure everyone's being good at home. So unlike any other year, a small silver lining is it's more difficult to do something that negates this. So, but congratulations, a huge congratulations. It has been a heck of a 4-year run and a heck of a 2-month run here at the end of it. So congratulations to all of them, and we look forward to the upcoming festivities. Moving on to item 9, 9.1, the Seven Hills Church lease agreement. Mr. Broadwater. I'm guessing you're muted. There you go.
Thank you, Dr. Heiss. Just a quick review of the Seven Hills Church lease. We've been working over the past year with Seven Hills, a lot of discussions to come upon an agreement with a lease for Titus Auditorium at Anderson High School. And through all the lengthy discussions and the iterations of different terms, including a review more recently by the Forest Hills School District Business Advisory Council, Forest Hills believes that we have come to an amenable lease agreement. And I just give you a few of the quick items that we have. The big part is Seven Hills will be leasing Titus, therefore they want to bring in new audio visual equipment, and in the agreement that amounts to $400,000 plus of audio visual equipment, which in Titus Auditorium is greatly needed. They will be paying up $3,000 per month on the rental agreement, and the agreement goes for 5 years as the total length. If Seven Hills opts out earlier, they may do that, but the audiovisual equipment is a donation and it will stay no matter when Seven Hills opts to end the agreement. Seven Hills' ultimate goal is to find property in Anderson, and this is kind of an in-between, and we know how difficult property can be to find, so the 5 years probably will play out. They also are going to provide a fund of $50,000 for any repairs during the term of the lease agreement. If there are large repairs, then that is another clause in the agreement that they would be taken care of. But the $50,000 fund is for wear and tear, whether it be carpet or if a seat gets broken or anything like that. We've got that fund that is there to repair anything in Titus Auditorium. And the last thing I would say about the agreement is when we were able to compare different agreements with different districts, I can tell you that this one is a good agreement for Forest Hills. It's upwards of about $200,000 more than what we have seen in other districts. So we are very, very excited to have Seven Hills. I can tell you that they've done a nice job. They've donated power packs to our students and families, as well as donated about 1,000 bottles of hand sanitizers to our staff as they pack up their classrooms. So that we've already been working in conjunction with Seven Hills on some items. So with that, the superintendent recommends the board approve the Seven Hills Church LLC lease agreement as shown in the attachment.
Great, thank you. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Seven Hills contract with Forest Hills.
Excuse me, we're in consent agreement?
Why don't we just, I mean, we only have 2 more things. Yeah,
Okay,
we'll just do each one.
all right.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Cropper? Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Okay, Ms. Cropper?
Mrs. Taylor,
Yes.
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Ms. Choice,
Yes,
Dr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Dr. Heights.
Yes. Thank you. Item 10.1, Human Resources Report. Mr. Broadwater.
Thank you, Dr. Heiss. The report will start with item A there, retirements. Our certified retirement is Miss Carol Shell, who has been at Anderson for 17 years. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, as the principal of Anderson, Carol Shell was an amazing teacher and she will be greatly missed. Her kids, I know, will miss her, and her ability to connect with kids is admirable. And I wish Carol Shell, and we wish Carol Shell nothing but the best, and thank her for everything she has done for our kids, because she has done an amazing job. We also have a retirement, Dolores McGowan, who's been with us for 25 years, most recently as the health aide at Summit. And I can tell you that Dolores McGowan was a very dedicated health aide at Summit. Every time I would stop in, she always had quite a few kids there. And I know she worked very, very hard for our kids. And again, we wish her nothing but the best in her retirement. And also under classified, we have Bonnie Gibson, who for 12 years was with us, and she was a cook at Turpin. And we wish Bonnie nothing but the best in her retirement as well. So those are the 3 retirements under item A. Under item B, resignation, you see that we have some resignations under certified and classified. Item C just explains our appointments and looking at the Ohio Revised Code. Item D with the appointments. These appointments, basically, we have taken classified staff. We are going to end their probationary status and they will be appointed a 1-year limited contract. So looking at that, what that means is they've completed their 90-day probationary period and they are now moving into regular status. Item E is the reappointment of administrators, this time every single year. Those administrators whose 2-year contracts are up have gone through the evaluation process and are now being recommended for 2-year contracts to extend for the next 2 years. So under item E, you can see those administrators listed. For item F, reappointment of personnel. Again, at this time of the year, we take a look at all of our personnel. This is for certified staff first. Certified is all of our teaching staff. And as we said prior, all of our teaching staff is back. They are going to be back next year minus the retirements, resignations, and the hire resigns. So item F is all of the certified staff we have on our HR report. And next you will see that operational, which is the classified. Again, at this time of every single year, we set out to have those approved for the next school year. And you can see those names listed under operational. For item G, those are the special service appointments. As you read through those, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And as we look at item H, that is the appointment of our consultants, coaches, or advisors. You'll see that that is a lengthy list as we have been making sure that we've got everybody included due to the COVID-19 issues. We want to make sure that we've got everybody listed appropriately. And at the end of the report, you will notice that our FTE counts, which is our full-time equivalents, are still at 787.64. That has not changed simply because we have been put on hold through all of this crisis. And the superintendent recommends that the board approve the personnel items as listed under the HR report.
All right, can I get a motion to approve?
Can I just make sure item I is not part of it? We discussed that part, the operational substitute salary schedule.
It is not. No, it is not.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the human resources report.
Need a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Cropper?
Ms. Choice,
Yes.
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen, Mrs. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Heights.
Yes. Thank you. All right, now item 12.1, lost my place. 5-year forecast.
11, item 11, teaching and learning.
Great. So item 11.1 is new textbook adoptions for our family and consumer science courses. Throughout the course of this year, we have completed a course of study for all of our family and consumer science courses. I want to commend Brian Robinson, Dave Kramer, and Brian Lee for their efforts in working with all of our teachers to update our curriculum in each one of these courses. The last time that curriculum was updated was 2011. And so there are 6 courses that we offer at Anderson and Turpin High School. And the textbooks that we have are proposing for board approval are for 2 of our courses. We felt like the other 4 courses did not need an updated resource, which was a good thing. So as a cost savings, but we felt like we had the right material there. So these 2 courses, the textbooks go for our nutrition and healthy lifestyles course and a career and life planning course. Just a point of note, we have made some intentional decisions to purchase class sets of these materials rather than books for each individual student. Currently entering next year, we have 240 students that are enrolled into these courses. So we are only purchasing class sets for these so that we can share resources, but also be a little bit responsible for finances with that. So we were able to capture some cost savings through the work that the team did. So these materials will be available for review upon request until the June 29th Board of Education meeting, where we will ask for formal approval. Should anyone need a review of these, in the past, we have had these available in the Teaching and Learning Office. We do have access codes for the digital versions of these books. If anyone would like to review, you can email myself, Greg Sears, and we will get you the access codes so that you can review prior to the June 29th board meeting.
Yeah, thank you. So that is just information only. We will vote next. Okay. Now item 12.1, 5-year financial forecast. Alana?
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen here for a minute. Okay, the Ohio Department of Education requires, can you see my screen? Sorry.
Yes, looks good.
Okay, good. The Ohio Department of Education requires school districts to submit a 5-year forecast of our general operating fund. The first submission of the school year is due at the end of November, and this update is due at the end of May. A forecast is prepared by looking at past trends, accounting for all known activities of the future, and predictions of what may happen in the future. And you see this slide every time I give you, go over the forecast with you. You know that there are many challenges to forecasting in a typical year, and these past 9 weeks have actually added a lot to this challenge. We have many challenges that are uncontrollable. And the first two there, the state foundation and the property taxes, are very material to the forecast. They alone comprise 96% of our revenues. And I'm not going to go ahead and read each one to you. You actually have this PowerPoint is in board docs. And you can see by looking at it, there are material challenges that impact each line of the forecast. So while there are challenges every year to forecasting what the budget and the forecast is going to be, everyone knows that our budget has gone through a lot of changes since Ohio's stay-home order on March 13. We've faced many extra challenges due to the pandemic. We have not currently received any direction from the Ohio Department of Education as to what school might look like next year. We don't know if we'll be back in our buildings or continuing our current remote online learning or some blend of the two. Needless to say, the delivery mode of instruction has a pretty material effect on what resources are going to be needed in the forecast to support that instruction. So over the weeks ahead and throughout the summer, I'm sure we will be receiving clarity from the state as to what our state revenues will be, as well as what instruction will look like in the fall. This 5-year forecast, it's important to think of it as a living document that will likely become outdated in the next few weeks as additional information from the state comes to light. The forecast is a good planning tool, but it's going to change. We will revise our forecast as we receive the information and keep you informed of the revisions. So what's happened over the last 9 weeks in revenue? Our state funding was cut by $1.6 million. That's 9% of what we get from the state in a year. Out of 24 pays, they send us 2 wires a month. They are going to take 1.6 million out of our last 3 wires, 9%. That's quite a bit to find out with only 2 months left in the fiscal year. In addition to the reductions from the state, doing to be out of the building, tuition and fee refunds are going to drop by another 191,000. Final property taxes were actually paid prior to March 13th, so our property taxes were actually up a little bit for our spring settlement, so they came in pretty strong. Final property taxes have been received for our fiscal year 20, and they came in about 125,000 over budget. So that was good news. Now, as we look ahead to the next year's in the forecast, we have projected 1.6 million in cuts to also be cut from our fiscal year 22. Forecasting that the economy will slowly start to recover in fiscal year 2022, and we are forecasting half of the state funding reductions. And I'm going across the first row there, it says state funding reduction. So in 2022, we are forecasting that the state will begin to recover, and that our state funding will start to get back to normal by about 50% of what the cuts are in fiscal years 20 and 21. In fiscal year 2023, we are forecasting that a quarter of the cuts will still be in existence. In fiscal year 2024, the fifth year of the forecast, we are forecasting a return to fiscal year 19 funding levels. So we are forecasting that it's going to take all 5 years of the forecast before state revenues turn to normal. We've learned from past cuts that once the state makes a cut, they come back pretty slowly. When we look at the next line of the forecast, like I said a few moments ago, we really don't know what school's going to look like next year. So when you look at the fee revenue, the tuition revenue, and also when we get to expenditures, you're going to see that as of now for the May forecast, we are forecasting what we have trends to forecast, and that is that we will be back in the building as normal. Now we know that's not likely to happen, but as the summer goes on and we receive more information from the state, we will revise our forecast. So that's why the second line of the revenue here, you see I have tuition and local fees. I have no cuts relating to that for the last 4 years of the forecast. The third line of the revenue shortfalls, as I said just a moment ago, we've already gotten our property taxes for fiscal year 20, and they came in as normal, as a matter of fact, being up a little bit. Going forward, we know that a lot of our residents are furloughed or unemployed at this time. A lot of times that has an effect on the collection of property taxes. We've been very lucky in our district that we have a very low property tax delinquency rate. Our property tax delinquency rate in normal, typical times is only 0.5%. When we look at what we think it will do going forward, we do believe it will have effect on next year's revenues. We've increased our delinquency rate to 1.5%. And we estimate that that will take 479,000 out of our forecast. Going forward to fiscal year 2020, we estimate that our delinquency rate will move up by 2% to 2.5%, and that will take just under $1 million out of our fiscal year 2022 forecast. As the economy starts to recover and people start to catch up on their bills, in 2023, we're taking our delinquency rate back down to 1.5%. And we estimate that we will receive that $500,000 in delinquencies will be paid in fiscal year 2023. Likewise, in fiscal year 2024, we forecasted that the economy is recovering and that we will recover all of our past delinquencies. So if you look at the 5-year effect on property tax delinquencies, you will see that over the course of the 5 years, it actually has a 0 impact on the ending cash balance. It's certainly a timing of collections due to the turn down in the economy. The last line there is the casino revenue reduction. Right now, we receive $52 per pupil. We know the casinos have been closed, and that is going to follow a similar path as to the other revenues in terms of next year. We're expecting $35 per pupil. The following year, as the economy starts, as we get back to the, as the people who like to attend the racetrack get back to the racetrack, we see that inching up a little bit and totally recovering by the last year of the forecast 2024. As Scott and I both speak with our state associations and advisors, this is kind of the path that they recommended. It's sort of the path that school finances took during the last recession, which began in 2008. And even though there are major differences between the two recessions, that is the only trend information that we have to look at. So as we search for ways and trends and knowns to forecast revenues, right now we know that this is the best we can do. There's a lot of uncertainty in this. And I think that's why it's very important to continue to look at this 5-year forecast as a planning tool and know that it's probably in this day and age is going to have to be adjusted maybe every couple of weeks. Before we move on to talk about, to discuss the expenditures and what's happening in expenditures over the last 9 weeks, I'd like to take a moment to just talk about the share of the state's K-12 reduction that we received. So overall, the governor made a 3.7% reduction to the statewide K-12 budget. That equals $300 million. And there are 610 school districts throughout the state. However, that 3.7 cut was not distributed equally amongst the district. As it does with most budgetary decisions, the state considered the income and property value of the school district when deciding the burden of the reduction. Throughout the 610 school districts in the state, the reductions ranged from $89 per pupil to $304 per pupil. Our per pupil deduction was $231 per pupil, and again, 9% of our budget. If you look at the chart that I have on this page, what you're going to see is that 523 districts took or had a lesser burden than Forest Hills. 86 school districts got a higher cut, got a higher percentage of their state budget cut than we did. So again, what that shows us is that Forest Hills has received a larger share of the state budget reduction in K-12 than the typical school district. I think I find this, I know that we all find this very distressing, because just 6 months ago, our community supported us and put our budget back on track. And now we're hit with this 1.6 million reduction. And again, it throws the burden back on to our taxpayers. Just to look at where we were in fiscal year 19, we see that the state supported almost 32% of our general fund budget. After the levy was passed, that threw more burden on our taxpayers. The state dropped by 2.75% to only being 28.9% 0.94% of our budget. This cut takes that down even further. So in the space of 1 year, the state's share of our budget has shrunk by 4%. Again, districts that have higher income and property wealth are getting a disproportionate share of these cuts, and it's swinging the burden onto our taxpayers. I digress from the 5-year forecast just a little because I don't want to lose track of that fact, because later in the forecast, we're going to talk about something else that is going on with other school districts. But moving on from what has happened in revenues to look at what's happened in expenditures the last 9 weeks. We've actually had some savings since we have not been in the building. If you take a look here, you see that we've saved a little over $300,000 in salaries and benefits. Since we have not been in the classroom, we have not had to pay subs. We have not paid overtime as we have had the stay-at-home order. You will see a little bit later in our agenda, I'm going to ask you to approve spring supplementals at a 50% rate, which will be a savings of $120,000. When we move on to our contracted or purchased services, you will see that unfortunately our kids did not get to go to Camp Kern. That was a $50,000 savings in fiscal year 20. I know that there are plans and hopefully we can get them there next year. So we've swung that $50,000 into next year's budget. With moving to remote learning, there was no need for substitute teachers. Going from March 13th through the end of the year, we're saving approximately $200,000 on substitute teachers. Of course, all meetings have gone to virtual. That saved us $80,000. We have $80,000 left in our travel accounts throughout the district. And our utilities are on track to save just a little over $100,000 from March 13th through the end of the year. Whoops. Up. As we look at what was saved in materials and supplies, of course, there was no one in the buildings. We put ordering on essential supplies only. There was no one in the building to receive the supplies and check them in. There was no need for some of the instructional supplies since we moved to remote learning. So we saved quite a bit, and most of that is in the instructional supply line, $226,000. We saved a little bit on textbooks. I know we approved a little tonight. And because the buses have not been on the road, we've saved about $30,000 in bus fuel. However, unfortunately, we had a bus had an engine blow, so we kind of went through $25,000 of that. So that kind of took our fuel savings down to just $5,000. So all told, from March 13th through June 30th, we've saved just under $1 million in our budget. So what does that tell us? If we put our revenues of about 1.8 million shortfall, and we take that against and add back in our expenditure savings of $1 million, you can see there at the top line there, we still are over budget according to our November forecast by about $854,000. So I've highlighted the next boxes that you see. So if you look at the COVID-19 effect on cash balance, that took us down to 9.6 million. And that's kind of in the pinkish box. Where were we before the pandemic hit? If you look at the gray highlighted number right at the bottom, we were forecasting to end our fiscal year 20 right at 10.5 million. Where do we think we'll be now? The blue box. That's the May forecast. While the COVID-19 effect on cash balance took us down to 9.6. Our budget was tracking really well, and we were about 124,000 a higher cash balance than we expected to be at this time. So 9 weeks ago, budget was looking good before the catastrophe of the pandemic. So, as Scott kind of alluded to earlier, what are we doing to address this? And actually, as Scott also said, we've been working on this and we continually look for cost efficiencies and cost savings. And Mike and Greg and Scott, the whole administrative team, had already been working on these efficiencies. So at this point in time, we do have the 746,000 that Mike detailed earlier. That is in the budget for fiscal year 21 and all years beyond. We have also taken a look at our building budgets, and we will be reducing those by 60,000 for all 4 future years of the forecast. Again, we will continue to track and update our revenues and expenditures. So as we get more information from the state, we will be updating what our expenditures look like. That said, where is our forecast at this point in time? This forecast has all the changes in revenues and expenses that we just talked about. Over the course of the 5 years, the $3.8 million deficit balance at 2024 is about 1.8 million lower than what we saw in November. And that is the effects of all the revenue shortfalls and the projection being that we will go back to normal expenses by being in the building. Again, you can look at this. I can tell you that this is probably going to change in a couple weeks when we get more information. Some other things that's going to affect that negative balance. The CARES funding is actually the federal stimulus money. And what I've shown you here is how it stands now. I will tell you this change seems like it changes daily. One day we're told we'll get the money in fiscal year 20, and the next day we're not going to get it to fiscal year 21. We just found out last week how much we were going to get. There are 2 different state funds that they are setting up. Fund number, the first fund there, Federal Fund 507. So this money won't be going in the forecast, but it could be used to relieve expenditures that are currently in the forecast. This fund is supported by the $489.2 million in funding that the state of Ohio got from the federal government. We need to spend this money in line with the purpose that you see there, and that is to provide emergency relief to schools related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Restrictions include, but are not limited to, providing for the coordination of preparedness and response effort, training and professional development of staff, planning and coordination during long-term closure, and purchasing technology for students. At this point in time, this is a one-time revenue. We're estimated to get the amount you see there, $598,467. We have been told that we will not receive this until after July 1, so we will receive it in our fiscal year 21. However, they have told us we could backcode expenditures to the March 13th date if need be. So that's one source of revenues that could alleviate some of the negative amount that we saw in the forecast. The next fund I have listed there is, that was the federal money, the $105 million that the Ohio's governor is receiving through the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. And this fund is not only for K-12, it's also for higher education. And these funds are directed to schools who are most significantly impacted by the coronavirus. So again, looking at the chart where we had 583 schools got a lesser cut than we did, we do not believe that we will see any money in this fund going forward. What are some big unknowns out there? Well, obviously, even though I went ahead and forecasted another 1.6 reduction, we really don't know what our fiscal year 21 budget is going to be yet. We are slanted. Remember that going into fiscal year 22, this is the second year of the governor's biennial budget, and we were slanted to receive $336,000 in student wellness and success funds. That we're told by ODE is possibly on the chopping block, and we may not get that. I have not forecasted any reductions in our Medicaid program reimbursements. We are waiting on Medicaid to let us know whether or not they are going to approve remote services for the reimbursements. So we're not sure about that. And the last one here is one that I certainly hope grows legs and gets us back to 3.7. Senator Dolan has presented a proposal in the Senate to use the money that the governor is getting from the 508 fund or the Rainy States Rainy Day Fund to get all districts back to a 3.7 reduction in their budget. So we certainly hope that gets through, but we can't count on it. What are some things that are going to affect our expenditures? We've talked a couple of times. We don't know about what school and instruction are going to look like. What are our new norms? How instruction is delivered is certainly going to affect our budget. The other thing, and Mike alluded to this earlier as well, transportation protocols. Those are currently being developed by ODE. It's quite possible that the social distancing protocols will require additional seating on buses, which of course will lead to increased routes, which means staffing as well as equipment. And in addition, ODE is currently developing custodial protocols for cleaning our buildings. And that may lead to increased staffing and increased cost in materials and supplies as we go forward. So that is the 5-year forecast, the update for May as it stands now. Again, there's so many unknowns out there. I do think that it will be, we will be bringing changes back to you fairly quickly. That, I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments.
Well, one comment I had was with the CARES Act, I was reading about that today. That also is proportional based on perceived property wealth. So they gave it was out of a Dayton paper, but they gave the example of Dayton Public Schools and Beaver Creek. Both had the same dollar reduction from the state, but then CARES came back of $2 million, and CARES came back and gave Dayton $9 million and gave Beaver Creek like $30. So Dayton actually came out plus 7.2 million after the cuts, where Beaver Creek still down it was actually 300,000, but down 1.7 million. So I assume we're in the same boat there, and that we're getting a much less amount from the CARES Act.
Yes, they followed the Title I, the federal grant Title I distribution guide. So yeah, it tended towards needier districts or districts that have students that have a lot more challenges than we do. You're very correct. So that said, I don't know if there's any other questions or comments or.
I think
If
you did a
there's-
really good job on a very difficult, we see this changing daily. It looks like you're staying on it. I mean, what is the advantage of backdating it to March? Is there advantage to do that?
I don't think there's any advantage for us because with that small amount, we're not going to have any trouble spending it in the correct year. And I think that they're just, ODE is just allowing that for school districts who have a extremely low cash balance and got hit with large expenditures due to the pandemic, sorry.
All right. Any other discussion?
Dr. Heights, if I may, sir.
Yes.
We're working closely with the Alliance as well. They're putting white papers together. Senator Dolan that Alana talked about is working, we're tracking our work with him and others to deal with the disparity that we're seeing across the state of Ohio and hopefully be able to accomplish what Alana's talking about closer to that 3.7 figure because that's impacting us largely more than what you'd find in other areas. I think the problem that some folks in those decision-making arenas are seeing is the extreme gap in access across the state of Ohio for students with technology, for students' ability to be able to access education depending upon where they live and what their individual resources are, which is based a little bit on demographics. And so I think that that's some of the work or some of the logic behind some of the distributions that we're seeing. And once again, Forest Hills, great community, supportive community, vibrant community, is considered to be a wealthy community with great amounts of access and all that. We saw, in our own community, we're feeding hundreds of kids a day who otherwise do not have food. We are sending technology to homes that potentially would not have technology and access during this time, as other districts are. So we are a wealthy district and we're blessed. However, the disparities are becoming more and more difficult on communities like ours because over several years, it just continues to be less coming to us and more dispersed across other parts of the state. And that's something that the legislator really needs to take on. That was part of the work that I was working with prior to this happening, is coming up with a foundation that makes sense where there's a real dollar amount that's equitable across the state for appropriate education of children in the state. I think Alana's done a great job, very, very nice job of making this simple to understand in a very complex world. And it shows again, it highlights how much Forest Hills is considered a wealthy district and loses a disproportionate amount of revenue coming in than what you might see in other places across the state.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve the 5-year forecast?
I make a motion to approve the 5-year forecast.
A second?
Second.
Ms. Cropper?
Ms. Joyce,
Yes.
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Heights.
Yes. All right, thank you. Item 12.2, Treasurer's Report.
I promise to be a little briefer with this one. Starting with agenda item 12.2A, Anderson High School received $1,550 in donation during the month of April. Agenda item B is the cash activity statement, which presents all the revenues and expenditures and board funds through April 30th. Item C presents the general fund, our 5-year forecast. It presents the receipts by month and the fiscal year to date ended April 30th. And as I said earlier, you can see where our final property taxes are in, and they certainly were up quite a bit. However, what we're going to see in May and June's revenue report is going to see those state revenues falling off by 1.6 million. Agenda items D and E present the expenditures in the general fund for the month and the fiscal year to date ended April 30th. And as you see there, usually I tell you that our expenditures are very stable. However, as we saw, we will be saving almost $1 million April through June. So you see with 83% of our fiscal year complete, we've only spent 81% of our appropriations. So we begin to see the savings coming in our expenditures there. The April 30th bank reconciliation and investments are presented in agenda items F and G. And appropriation detail is presented in agenda item 12.2H. These appropriations are being decreased due to the cancellation of spring student clubs and sports. So those activities aren't happening. So we're going to need to take that estimated revenue out as well as the expenditures. Agenda item I, request a transfer from the general fund to the permanent improvement fund. Agenda item 12.2J, requests approval to pay 1/2 of the supplemental activity contracts for the fourth quarter and spring athletic activities due to the impact of the pandemic and the subsequent building closure. I respectfully request that you approve agenda items 2.2 as presented.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the treasurer's report and the agenda items.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Cropper?
Ms. Choice,
Yes.
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor? You're muted. Yes, okay.
Sorry.
Dr. Heights?
Yes. Okay, item, well, now we're to item 13, reports to the Board of Education. I'm going to start with, again, a quick recap of our weekly meeting. So Mr. Rebels and I meet virtually with the township and the Parks District on Mondays. It has been an excellent meeting that we have over the past 6 weeks or so since this started. Most recently, we had their involvement with our Don't Call It a Parade, Call It a Caravan that we had for our elementaries, covering all of the streets of our district, which was very well done. I want to shout out to Steve Severs and the crew there to help us with the route planning and getting that done. The joke was that when we called it a parade, it was disallowed, but when we had the exact same thing, only called it a caravan, then it was okay. So, but the kids did great, the families did great. It was very well received, and it was a nice way, especially for the elementary kids to get a chance to see their teachers again. Other issues that we talked about, the Josh Girth, our trustee, is working with the government. Not only the OHSAA was one thing. Obviously, we talked a little bit about the Parks District is getting a lot of questions on, now that it's open, can we actually do anything? And how that looks. And then of course, he's asking what we're doing, and our guidance so far from the state has been different than what guidance is somewhere else. So he was going to try and push. He has some contacts there to try and at least coordinate that so we can figure out what we need to do. It's okay for cross country to run, but it's not okay for cross country to run, basically, is the guidance that we're getting right now. And then the biggest push, and it's going to be that from, I think, from all of our organizations, from the School Board Association to the treasurers and the superintendent, but also from our local governments, our Parks District, is to find out what the biennial budget is going to be. I mean, that's going to be and we all need to know. And they took 1.6 million out of our last 6 weeks. So what's going to happen starting June 30th when they have to have that come out. So anyway, but those meetings have been very productive. We're able to go over a lot of things, even simple things like some of these road closures and how they affect busing or don't affect busing around the township has been very good. Moving on to item 13.1, the Anderson Township Economic Development Committee report. Ms. Barber.
Yes, the Economic Development Committee as a whole is scheduled to meet next Tuesday virtually. But there's also this indoor recreation complex discussion that's still ongoing. That is a group from the township, the parks, the school district, which would be Mr. Prebbles and Mr. Broadwater, and me, and Forrest Heiss also joins those calls. That is really big picture and really long term. But the good thing is that it's really moving along. Each group is kind of identifying what the biggest needs are that we've seen and the things that we are most often approached about, which would be field space, indoor rec space, pools. We're kind of combining all of the needs that we've heard and trying to figure out if there is a way to pool resources, and make it all work in a way that saves taxpayer money over the long term. Now, keep in mind, this is at the same time as we're trying to come up with a solution for Turpin and Anderson's pools. So fully aware that the timing is tough. These things take a while to figure out. But the really cool thing is that everyone in the community and all these entities is involved. So I think it's moving along well. Mike or Scott, do you want to comment anything about that?
Just like Dr. Heiss said, there's a good amount of collaboration taking place in our community. It's nice to have everyone in the room sharing information and looking for sometimes alternatives, sometimes solutions to problems that exist in our community. So I appreciate all the help of all the people involved with the Economic Development Committee and look forward to working with them in the future.
Great. That's all I've got.
Okay, great. Item 13.2, Finance Committee report.
We really not met as a finance committee. I think we're meeting more on these executive sessions as a 5 board member group to discuss our finances. And that's the way we're kind of dealing with it right now, I think.
Yep. Okay, item 13.3, the Forest Hills Foundation report. Dr. Rasmussen or?
Yeah, did Dee send a report to you, Scott? No? Am I muted? No, okay. There's not a lot to report. They are raising money still, and obviously in light of the pandemic and everything, that's a priority. We are looking at new board members coming in and transitioning, and that's kind of the main thing. I would like to remind everyone here and in the community that this week, Tom and Chi, that just opened next to the Anderson Kroger, has partnered with the Forest Hills Foundation to for a fundraiser. So a certain amount of your proceeds go back to our schools. So that's going on this week. And we also have the virtual run happening as well. You can find more information out about that. It's not too late to, sign up and participate. So my daughter and I are doing it. It's cute, it's fun, and the money goes back to the district, obviously. So that's really about it for right now.
Thank you. Yeah, that's at fhfe.org for more information on that. So item 13.4, human resources. Edie?
Okay. We have not had a meeting.
Okay. Next up, legislative liaison report. I've kind of brought up a lot of things that have been going on in the state legislature. It's obviously we see the governor every day at 2, but yet the education part of it has been less of an issue that has come up once the schools were closed, and then he cut the budget. So I anticipate that this will become more. You saw Mr. Dolan is pushing, and he's been a public school advocate, which is good. But there's going to be a lot going on. We have a lot of people that are pushing our representatives to for clarity on a lot that's going on. It does change daily. So Item 13 or 13.6 policy. Mr.
Yes, that's
Howard,
me.
Great.
Yeah, so this item 13.6, I'm going to explain it a little bit before we go ahead and do it. So this is policy number 6325, which is procurement of federal grants and funds. The treasurer's office actually needs this approved tonight so that they can be in compliance with the state auditor's request. So we're going to go ahead and put that motion on here now to waive the second reading so that we can approve it in this batch that we are about to approve next. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Okay, so with that said, I will make a motion to waive the requirements for 2 readings to change to policy 6325, procurement of federal grants and funds.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Ms. Cropper?
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ms. Choice,
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Heights.
Yes. All right, thank you. We'll move on to item 13.7, policy committee report. Ms. Barber.
Okay, so this is, you'll see a listing of policies that we reviewed in our meeting on April 28th. Most of them were just standard things recommended by Neola. I don't recall any significant changes to anything. Do you, Leslie? Okay. So these are being put before you for the first reading. And along with that, I will also make the motion to approve the changes to board policy 6325, procurement federal grants and funds as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Ms. Cropper?
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ms. Choice,
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Heights.
Yes. All right, thank you. Safety committee report. We have not had a safety meeting as yet. The spring meeting will be going on into the summer at some point. Teaching and learning committee.
We have not met since our first meeting this spring. I don't know about Greg, but I've been busy wrapping up my semester, and I'm sure you guys are dealing with a lot. And our plan is to meet sometime this summer, and then we'll just go from there.
Thank you. 13.10, technology and facilities committee report. We have not had a meeting.
Yes.
Item 13.11, Donna Lawver, FHTA report. All right, great.
Good evening.
Yeah.
On behalf of the Forest Hills Teachers Association, it's a really rainy Monday here, and just want to make sure this evening as we start that as we end a school year that actually didn't start the same as it's ending, this time of year is usually a time of year of great celebration, and we want to continue that, but also make sure that we take a few moments to plan and reflect and congratulate all the things and people that they've been working so hard. The association right now, tonight, tonight is time to reflect, plan, and congratulate. First, by reflecting. The year has presented FHT with challenges, and we've moved forward with purpose. Full teaching force met the levy in the beginning of the year, and we all worked really hard as a school district to come together and pass our levy, which happened in November. Then throughout the year, we've seen so many accolades and so many awards and so many dedications of our staff, our students, and our administration as they move forward to do great things in our community. Tonight, though, as we start looking at the past, we also look at this current moment and think about what March has brought. It brought a halt to the school day, but not to the force of dedicated teachers and administration. As we've set these limitations and watched personalized learning take the approach, as well as making sure that we kept our students and relationships a top priority. I do think one of the bonuses of this happening has been that we have proven to our schools, communities, our parents, and our students that Forest Hills is still very student focused, and relationships cannot be anything that we can take for granted. Having the opportunity to meet with your students in Zoom meetings, or as we talked about the caravan Monday night, the kids and the teachers and so forth, we're really, really excited. And as we see our seniors and so forth, we are all very dedicated to our kids. And it is absolutely imperative at this time that we keep those moments as a bonus as we look forward to next year. Planning. FHTA has worked to evaluate legislation and is currently extensively involved in the financial aspects of the COVID impacts, as well as the current scenarios of Forest Hills School District. As I listen tonight to Alana give those presentations, I also take the time to make sure I'm studying legislation. I'm looking forward to opportunities that we can bring as the association to help support the work that's being taken place here in the district in a financial aspect. Thirdly is the time to congratulate. Behind me is this really cool green sign. I believe there's been several of those that have been appearing lately in our community. And I want to make sure I take a moment to thank Michelle Easton and all the members of the Forest Hills Council for this great opportunity to basically say thank you. I received probably, I don't know, 60 to 80 emails from teachers and many of our administrators saying how appreciative it felt just to have a moment for somebody to take time to say thank you and to say it's a proud, moment for them to be recognized here in Forest Hills. A lot of pride. I know Mr. Heist, you're here tonight, Dr. Heist, but I know we've talked a little bit about, we have teachers that drive an hour, 45 minutes. We have teachers all over greater Cincinnati that come every day and have spent many, many miles this past year, as many of their careers getting to and from our school district. And we want to thank our parents and our community for taking time to go to their homes and tell them thank you with these great signs. It was really well appreciated. I also want to make sure I throw out a really good thank you to Adam Samuels and Bree Gilroy, as they've kind of helped me make sure as we're moving on many aspects in the district to keep the great marketing and all the congratulations moving forward. Secondly and foremost is our seniors of the class of 2020. You make FHSD proud. You each represent the best of all of our staff. Every year as our seniors graduate, it's just not their senior teachers. I always think about K through 12 and our preschool and so forth. Some of our students have been in our school district 13, 14 years, depending on, if they were here through preschool even. But as they graduate, it's all 9 of our buildings coming together to say thank you and to congratulate those students and give them all the kudos that they deserve this time of year. I know many of us are adopting seniors. I know many of us are sending great notes and gifts. And right now that's really important to those students. So please let you know as a board that the teaching staff is 100% behind these young people. Thank you to our administrative teams, our principals, our district leadership, Greg, Scott, Mike, Alana, for the hours that you've given and all the time behind the scenes. There's so many great things that are taking place. A very wise person stated to me that it costs nothing to be nice. And if anything is proven to me over the last months, that is sincere. Being nice during difficult times, our teachers and our parents and our students and all of our teams are working very well together to make sure that we're doing the best that we can, as well as providing excellent instruction and giving as much as we can to our staff and to our community and our parents. And students, above all, as always, you guys are the best. So with that, board, thank you for letting me have this opportunity to come and thank as many people as I could, but also let you know I'm aware and that the association is here to support and move forward as we're in our current situations. And I look forward to working with our teams this summer and with the legislative issues and concerns that are coming up. Have any questions?
Donna, I have a comment.
Sure.
I just want to thank you and thank the teachers for all you do and all your hard work. And just let them know that we understand and realize that they're the backbone of the school district. Without them, we could do nothing.
Well,
And so
we
just
appreciate
let them
that.
know that we value and appreciate them and everything they do.
Okay, thank
They
you so
do
much.
as well.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I had the honor and privilege of delivering some of those, and it is impressive, some of the distances that our teachers go. They are spread out all over, especially I'll give a little shout out to the kindergarten teacher whose bridge is out right at the bottom. I believe to Columbus in order to get back around to get over here. So that was special, and yeah, we really do appreciate the teachers.
Yeah. Dr. Heiss, I had a teacher send me a note that said, you came all the way to Milford. And I said, no, we came all the way to Miamisburg.
Right.
We've come to Dayton, we went to Georgetown, and we're still delivering some things. So teachers, hang in there. But yes, thank you so much, everyone, for that.
Teachers appreciate it. We had one that contacted us saying, you put it at my old house. I really appreciate it, but could I get one for my new house? I just moved.
I gotta tell you, they're a hot commodity, very, very popular. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, before we move into executive session, I would like to mention that our next board meeting will be at, the next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be on June 29th, 2020, as we will still be under lockdown till the 30th. I anticipate that will be a virtual meeting. We will be going into executive session. I do not anticipate any actionable items at the end of the session, but we will come back here in the next hour and a half, 2 hours, if you want to stay here and hear us adjourn. So I want to thank everybody. I think we had over 100 people watching live here, and appreciate your interest and your support. And we will see you next month.
22G4, I hereby move that the board adjourn to executive session to review negotiations of bargaining sessions with employees concerning compensation and other terms and conditions of employment.
And then
Anything else?
I believe, do we need to personnel matters?
Revised code 121.22G1,
Right, personnel matters. So the first one.
Okay.
the very first one.
Okay. Pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1, I hereby move that the board adjourn to executive session for the purpose of considering the state of one or more appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, compensation of a public employee or official. Is that it?
That is good. Can I get a second?
Second.
Ms. Cropper?
Ms. Joyce,
Yes.
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Heights.
Yes. Again, thank you everyone for coming, and we'll be back. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. I know you've been eagerly anticipating the end of this meeting. It's 8:48. We did lose two of our members. Oh, no, she's back. Wow, Dee Dee's made it. So everybody did participate in the executive session. We had one 5-year-old who was being recalcitrant in his bedtime. So he is being taken care of as we speak, but the rest of us have come back. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All right, do I get a second?
I will happily second.
All right, Ms. Cropper, call the roll. Mute yourself. Oh, there you go. Unmute yourself.
There we go. Mrs. Saylor,
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ms. Choice,
Yes.
Dr. Heights.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.